If we were to pull the thread from last week's episode on human-centered marketing, it might naturally take us to heart-centered selling, our topic today on Brand for Good. Welcome to Brand for Good, the show for purpose-driven leaders who want to build timeless brands and create sustainable impact. I'm Lorraine Sugart, former PR and marketing executive turned founder of the disruptive agency Prosper for Purpose. I've worked with some of the world's most beloved brands, and I'm here to help you elevate your brand identity, visibility, influence, and impact. Are you ready to brand for good? Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of Brand for Good. Today, I have a wonderful guest expert, Dora Rankin. Dora Rankin's specialty is sales, and recently she evolved her positioning and her brand with the launch of a lecture, a book, and a course. Here to talk about that is Dora Rankin. Welcome, Dora. I'm so glad you're here with me.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So you had a pretty powerful brand and position in the market before the debut of the Heart Cell. So can you tell me a little bit? Well, I know, but tell our listeners a little bit about what you were doing and how you kind of built your audience.
So, Lorraine, it's wonderful to be chatting with you about this because I think we're both native Clevelanders. I think we both have that in our pocket. And the interesting thing about being a native Clevelander and just being a Midwesterner is that commonality of camaraderie runs really deep here.
It does.
And I mention that because nowadays I say, your net worth is in your network. But, growing up here professionally in Cleveland, your reputation sometimes speaks for itself based off of the relationships you've built over decades of time, but you don't really realize that that's what's happening until you land in it 20 years later. And so
I love that.
Right. And so both of us we didn't really know that our brand was going to reflect on the years of work that we were doing inside our
other
little
people's businesses.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. I love that. I never really thought about it that way, but it's so true. It was probably easier in some ways to step out of corporate and start a business because I started with the people I knew in my hometown.
Yes, that's exactly where my brand started, was just, I know Dora from.
Yeah.
And all of those businesses, all of those relationships that I've built over 2 decades is what kickstarted my brand. Somebody said to me recently, now I travel all over the world and it's so much fun. But recently I was in Iceland teaching the Heart Cell, and a woman looked at me and said, "You're exactly who you are here as you are anywhere else, like in the book, here in your hometown." And I think that's the value that I bring in the brand, is that here it is.
Yeah. Well, I love that because it illustrates when people say to me, "I'm so confused. I thought brand was about your graphics," or whatever their definition is. I said, really, ideally, your brand is what you present about yourself, and that includes your visuals, but it's a lot about what you say about yourself and what you stand for and all that. And it's the intersection of that, your identity, with what people experience when they actually meet with you or learn from you. And where those two overlap is actually your brand. So when you hear something like that, I take that as the highest compliment that you can get, that there's no discordance between the two.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
That's so lovely. It took a minute though, right?
Yeah.
What's so interesting about building a brand is when you don't have the background in brand, right? If you don't have that background, you don't really know that that's what you're building until poof,
there it is.
Right.
And hopefully it's a pleasant surprise, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
That's so true. Mm-hmm.
That is so true.
There's no bad examples though, right? So
yes, we will leave it at that. So, how long had you been in business before the idea of the heart cell kind of concept came to you?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for asking. I left the corporate world in 2017. So I was a banker, not a baker, a banker. So I was in commercial banking for many, many years, always working inside other people's businesses, just like you said. And then in 2017, I lost my job at the bank. And that's when I moved into the startup world. So I joined a high growth, fintech, super complex startup. And over those 3 years, I didn't know at the time that I was building out my IP for becoming a business coach and business consultant. But in those 3 years, I supported a fintech go from complete white space of absolutely no sales and revenue to market activation in 17 states. So I knew
That's
I had
amazing.
something that
Yeah.
was really valuable, but I also knew that I wasn't supporting the founders that I really wanted to support. And the moment of clarity that I had around that came in 2020 while I was standing inside a fintech conference of about 3,000 founders and saw less than a dozen women in the audience. So it was time. It was time for me to exit and take a leap of faith and jump into business consulting and business coaching for women founders. And so I've been doing that since 2020. And throughout the last, however, 4 years, almost 5 years now, about 2 years ago, I saw that there was a really big gap for women founders, specifically in how they activate their market and how they actually get somebody to sell or to buy their thing. And the
Mhm.
get somebody to buy their thing sales gets a really bad rap. And I wanted to bring that to the market where women founders weren't afraid of sales and they had a really clear process on how they were going to reach their revenue goals. So the heart cell was not born in 2022. The heart cell was born in 1998. But throughout the years and all of the processes that I've built out, that's when it came to fruition that it was time to actually write the book.
That's awesome. So, last year in November of 2023, you were a speaker at Women's Entrepreneurship Day Ohio, and you kind of debuted at least the title and kind of your philosophy behind that. So, can you kind of share what that was like preparing to speak and share this in that precise way for the first
Mhm.
time?
Right in our hometown. So right
Right
in
in, yeah,
Cleveland.
that's
Yes,
right.
yes, with you, which was so much fun. It was November of 2023. And so looking back, putting together that specific talk to an audience full of women entrepreneurs, the heart cell stemmed originally from one of my very first mentors
Mm.
inside the bank. And she was a senior executive. And every day we would get on these quick 5 to 10 minute quota calls, like quota calls, like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? What are you doing today? And this would be hundreds of people. And this is how she managed her teams. One morning, I was super young, and one morning I got on the call with her. And instead of like asking us, widget goals and quota and
Yeah.
productivity and performance, all these questions that are important, instead of asking us those questions, she asked us what we were grateful for that morning. And it was weird because nobody understood why she was asking that question. And me being in my early 20s at the time, I latched on to that as sincere effort to care about the person that was working for her first, before herself and before the performance of the company. And so
Right.
that's literally where the heart style stems from. It stems from no matter what you're doing in your professional life, or even in your personal life, but no matter what you're doing in your professional life, especially building a business, how are you putting the person in front of you first before you? And we don't really do that. Think about what you think about when you wake up in the morning. As soon as you wake up in the morning, you're thinking about what you have to do for the day, what your performance is for the day,
Right.
where you have to take your kids. You're not thinking about another person, maybe your kids. You're not thinking about another person first. And that's really where the heart health stemmed is how sincerely are you looking at others before looking at yourself? And then I wrapped a really solid sales process around it so you can activate your market.
I love that. I love that so much. So, what are the things if people pick up the book that they can? Well, you kind of said that it's a sales process for individual business owners to put into place so that they can activate their market. So, what does that actually mean to you to activate your market?
Oh, such a deep question. I'll keep it really simple though. And you and I, we need to teach this too, because the simple answer to activating a market is inbound versus outbound. Marketing is your inbound, it's how people find you. And
Mhm.
sales is your outbound, it's how you find your people. And if you're
And
sitting around being reactive, waiting for people to find you, you're going to be sitting around for a long time. But if you add an outbound strategy, if you add a sales process, then you're going to create a flywheel. So we got to have inbound, we got to have outbound so we can
yes.
get to that flywheel of clients, right? Preaching to the choir right now.
Yes, you are preaching to the choir, but for our listeners that, maybe that's a term that they've heard but don't really comprehend fully, I think that clarification was perfect. It's that combination of inbound and outbound. It's kind of like being a hunter and a gatherer, right?
Mhm, yep.
So bringing both to the side. Well, I met you last year when we met to talk about you speaking at Women's Entrepreneurship Day. And I felt like not only that we were kindred spirits because we really teach two sides of the same coin, right? But also because you have such a great energy about you. And I get that now online, but the first time I met you was in person. And I think that that's really something also that is powerful, whether you're doing your own marketing or sales. You have to step into that power and your energy and bring, like, another word that kind of defies description, but charisma. And I just wonder if you can talk a little bit about going through the sales process as someone like you that enjoys it and enjoys meeting people and caring about them, and how you've seen that attitude kind of transform some of your students. Because I'm jumping ahead here, but there's also a heart cell course. So, can you talk about that a little bit, the approaches to sales and how they make a
Yeah.
difference?
Reality is my day to day, I am an introvert. I love to hang out at home. I love my 3 dogs. My husband and I go camping. I like to be a homebody, but I immerse myself in my clients because I love so much what I do, right?
Mhm.
But here's the thing. For me, networking is dead. I remember saying that at your talk is that networking is dead. It's ineffective chit chat. I don't have time for it. Nobody has time for it anymore. So, in order for us to get to the point, we need to have intent around our conversations. So, every single conversation that I go into, no matter where I am, I'm truly looking at it as a heart cell conversation. I'm looking at it as what's the purpose, what's the intent, and what's the mutual benefit for both of us? And honestly,
Right.
I can pick up pretty quickly now whether or not it's like walking into my mom was always really good at walking into a clothing store and knowing really quickly whether or not there was going to be a perfect outfit inside that clothing store. A conversation is kind of the same. Like I can
Yes.
walk in pretty quickly and figure out whether I want to continue to talk to you.
That's so good. I love that analogy. Oh my goodness.
And that's kind of what the heart cell conversation does is it's like,
Uh-huh.
okay, is there going to be something tangible that we're going to walk away with here? Because our
Right.
time is our most valuable asset. And
I
I'm going
100%
to give you
agree.
your time back, right? I'm just going to give you your
Mm.
time back if there's not synergy.
Right. No, that makes so much sense. So, what kind of transformations have you seen? I'm sure you've had clients come to you and say, I hate selling, but I know it's something that I need to do, might grow my business. Can you talk a little bit about what changes for them or how you kind of
Absolutely.
spark that change.
I love case studies. Yes. So, most recent case study that I am just over the moon excited about is a woman came to me woman founder who has been an attorney for churches for the last 20 years. And she's had this virtual conference for the last 17 years. And she came to me and she's like, I don't think I am monetizing this the way I potentially could be monetizing this,
Right.
right? And I was like, yeah, you have an entire lead pipeline sitting in a conference in front of you for 6 hours. So she's like, I think I would like to monetize this. So within 30 days, we put together what she was going to actually pitch to this audience. And in 30 days, she grossed $75,000 from doing that.
That's
So, but she was
wonderful.
she was terrified. She's like, I don't want to go to churches. I don't want to pitch to them. They don't have money. She had all of that stuff
Yeah.
stuck in her head thinking, oh, I can't do this. And now she's like, oh, why didn't I do this 17 years ago? Right. But,
Right.
neither here nor there. But that'll give you an idea. At the end of the day, my role with women founders and with organizations and corporations is revenue growth, right? So
Right.
that's sales equals revenue. So my goal with you is to figure out what should be the process so we can get to those revenue goals that you're trying to obtain.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because growth strategy more adequately describes what you do, I believe. It's not just the here's how you sell and here's how you find your market, but it's really strategically thinking about what are your overall business goals and how do we employ a strategy for growth that moves you closer? Like, where are the opportunities that you're not monetizing? Like you were saying with the woman that did the virtual conference for churches.
Right.
So I think that's an important distinction. You can get people more comfortable with selling, but ultimately you're about how do we grow your business, right? And you are getting people to understand that sure, you can sit back and wait and you will get some business, but you also have to understand how to reach out and really how to convene the people that are already in your network that you're not even perhaps talking to or asking and letting them know what you can do for them. So I really love that it's all wrapped up in that. And then kind of the access point is the heart sell. So, yeah, I think that's really inspiring and accessible for people who maybe are not comfortable stepping into the role of salesperson, right?
Right. And as a CEO, it's our job to create the passion in others about our thing. It's not anybody else's job to create the passion in our thing. And so we're so quick to hire out to find somebody to create the passion in our thing, where it's like, you can go and you can do this.
Right.
And then once you have oh, this is what's working, then go and spend the money and hire out. But I think we're so quick to hire out, or we're really quick to I love this so much. And I have a client that just created this anti-bias equity tool, right? So it is amazing. It teaches AI equity to all of these tech firms. So she's like, this is a complete game changer, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to buy it though until you go out and find the people to buy it. She's like, well, I'm just going to put it up and everybody's going to buy it. Nobody's going to buy your thing. It's your job to create that passion
Right.
in others. They're not going to just be passionate about it because you are. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's part of what I teach as well, or what I do with my clients for sure, is that really a lot of times it comes down to sales is a transfer of inspiration. Your
Mhm.
passion becomes their passion. They want to have
Mhm.
that. And, you have to have that spark so someone else can catch the fire.
Right.
Yeah, to simplify, we're simplifying complex ideas, but I
Yes.
love that. So, can you share with the listeners, like, one of the key takeaways from the heart sell that maybe they could take today and say, yeah, I want to think about how I can implement this in my business, or, oh, that's really good. I need to go buy the whole book, which we hope
Totally.
people will. And we'll have a link to the book in our show notes.
Totally. Yeah. So the book overall is a memoir how to. So it also shares my story of being a single mom, being in the corporate world, and the love story of my mother and I. And then I build out the IP, all of the processes are within the book as well. But the major takeaway, my soapbox, is that there's only 4 ways that you can actually get a sale. So every single week, the focus and priority should be on these 4 areas. Number 1 is identifying your ideal client profile, knowing exactly who your target audience is, not just who is on my email list, but knowing exactly who your target audience is. And if you don't know, it's time to test. And you can test in many ways, right? Right.
Yeah,
We
for
know there's lots
sure.
of testing. Number 2 is putting an actual go-to market strategy around your partnership development. So if you're the business owner that has built your business on word of mouth and people like you and refer to you, that's not a strategy. That's a I'm nice and there's hope. But putting an actual strategy around your partnership development, we used to call that our centers of influence, right? So
Mhm.
what does that look like on a weekly basis? Number 3 is what I'm doing right now with Lorraine. It's building our ecosystem. So an ecosystem is how are you getting out to the masses every single week? How are you hanging out in front of your audience inside the masses, whether it's workshops, whether it's showing up and volunteering, whether it's speaking on a podcast, but how are you dedicating to your ecosystem every single week? And then number 4 is what does your inbound marketing look like? Do you have a marketing plan? So all 4 of those things need to be in play, not just picking 1 or 2, but all 4 of those need to be in play every single week for you to activate that flywheel. And that's what's inside the heart cell.
I love that. I love that. You touched on your mom, and of course, I know that story. But can you share with our listeners a little bit about really what you learned from your mom? And actually, your business was inspired by your mom at one point, the name of your business. So, do you want to share a little bit about your mom?
Sure. Yes. Thank you. So, yes, my mom continues to be my heart. And my mom passed away several years ago, and she was a powerhouse. She was a director of nursing. So she lived and breathed the heart cell for years. But she got sick in her 40s, and I was in my 20s, and she got sick with multiple sclerosis, and she wasn't able to work anymore. So I took care of her for 10 years before she passed away. And it was literally the biggest blessing of my life to date, even though at the time it was the hardest thing I had to go through. But now it's like living out her legacy. Like I know every day, everything I do is for her. And I felt that I really wanted to dedicate the book to her and this business to her.
I love that. I love that so much. So, tell us a little bit about where people can find the book and then about the course. Tell us a little bit about, does the course expand on the book? How do people know whether they want the book or the course first?
Yeah, who knows? What do you want first? Right? So so always, tap into the book first. The book is a great place to stomp around and get your feet wet. And then from the book, you can decide whether or not you want to work with me, literally one-on-one work with me, because I still do that nowadays. It's actually what I do primarily is to work with women founders one-on-one. But the course is the backup, right? So it's how do I actually implement this? So the course is a way for you to just take everything in the book. There's templates, there's modules, there's all the good things that come inside a course. And actually, the course stemmed from recently, I taught the hard sell at some of the small business development centers. And so the course actually stemmed from knowing that there's a train the trainer coming. So there's the hard
Oh,
sell course, and then there's the hard sell sales advisor academy. So for the sales teams and
nice.
for the company. So lots of stuff happening.
That's great. And we will have all the links in the show notes. You can also learn more at dorarankin.com. So, Dora, what is next for you? What are you looking forward to as we close out 2024 and look ahead to 2025?
I've been traveling often. I love the fact that we get to be in person again. As I said, I am an introvert. So when I travel, there's intent to it. So I'll be traveling to some conferences and doing some heart health speaking throughout the rest of 2024. And then 2025, sky's the limit, right? Sky's the limit for
Yeah,
all of us women founders out there.
I
Just
love that.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on Brand for Good today. I really appreciate your story and what you're sharing with our listeners. And again, finally, we will have all the links to Dora's wonderful book and her course and her information in the show notes. So, to everyone listening, thank you so much. I hope this episode gave you some more ideas about how to build your own brand for good. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Brand for Good show. If you like what you heard, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and leave a review so other purpose-driven leaders can find this valuable content. To learn more about building a brand for good, please visit prosperforpurpose.com for more resources and information on all the ways you can work with us.